You're haunted by her, not by her presence, but by her absence. You wake up thinking about her. You fall asleep wishing she was there. You build scenarios in your mind, replaying old memories, crafting new ones, imagining words she never said and gestures she never made. You've trapped yourself in an endless loop of longing, a prison constructed from your own thoughts. And the worst part? She's not even there. She's nowhere near you. You're obsessed with a ghost of your own creation. Psychologists call this rumination, the relentless cycle of obsessive thoughts that feed on themselves, growing stronger the more you try to push them away. Your brain, wired for connection and recognition, clings to her like an addict craves his next fix. It's not love. It's not even desire. It's dependency. Your mind has become addicted to her absence because it has made you believe that only she can fill the void within. You might think you're holding on to her, but in reality, you're holding on to an illusion. Your brain, driven by patterns of attachment, has constructed a version of her that exists only within your mind. And every time you feed that illusion with thoughts, memories, or fantasies, it grows stronger. What was once a fleeting thought has become an obsession, a parasite feeding off your own psyche. Neuroscience shows us that repetitive thoughts create pathways in the brain. The more you think about her, the deeper those pathways become, like grooves etched into stone. Every memory you replay, every fantasy you indulge, every moment you waste wishing for her presence, only deepens the addiction. It becomes part of you, like a wound you refuse to let heal. Why does this happen? Because your mind craves resolution. It hates ambiguity. When there is no closure, it fills the void with endless analysis, hoping that somehow, through enough thought, the pain will disappear. But the pain doesn't disappear. It grows. It thrives on your attention, becoming more real than the woman you're obsessed with. The Stoics understood this truth centuries before modern psychology could put it into words. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The obsession is not caused by her. It's caused by your mind's refusal to accept reality. It's caused by your own unwillingness to let go. You may believe that holding on will somehow bring her back, that obsessing over her will create some cosmic connection. But the truth is brutal. The more you cling to her memory, the more power you give it. You are not longing for her. You are longing for the feeling she once gave you: security, affection, purpose. You have allowed her absence to define you, to consume you, to become your identity. This is not love. This is not even desire. This is a sickness of the mind. And the only cure is to reclaim your own power, to break the chains of obsession that you have forged for yourself. This is part 1, where we explore the psychological mechanisms that trap your mind in endless obsession. We will uncover how your brain's natural processes can turn into enemies, locking you in a mental prison of your own making. But this journey doesn't end here. In part 2, we will dive deeper into advanced psychological theories of love, attachment, and desire, analyzing how concepts from quantum physics intersect with the mechanics of obsession. We will explore how the very fabric of your thoughts may be influencing your reality in ways you never imagined. If you're ready to take back control of your mind, like, share, and subscribe to Victory Stoic. Comment below with your war cry, "I reclaim my own mind," or share your story of overcoming obsession and finding peace. Because the first step to freedom is acknowledging the prison you've built around yourself. And the second step is tearing it down Number 1. The illusion of control. Wanting what you cannot have. You are haunted by the illusion of control. You convince yourself that if you think about her long enough, obsess over her deeply enough, somehow, you will bend reality to your will. That your longing, your fixation, will somehow force the universe to give her back to you. But the truth is brutal. What you are trying to control is something that was never truly yours to begin with. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The wisdom is harsh, but liberating. Control over external circumstances is an illusion. The only power you truly possess is over your own thoughts, your own reactions, your own mind. Consider David, a 35-year-old architect from San Francisco. His relationship with Laura ended abruptly after years of what he thought was perfect harmony. One day, she simply told him that her feelings had changed. No dramatic fight, no betrayal, just a quiet admission that what once existed between them had faded. David couldn't accept it. His mind rebelled against the loss. He replayed conversations, scrutinized every detail of their last days together, searching for clues, searching for control. He became obsessed with the idea that if he could just figure out what went wrong, he could fix it. If he could only say the right words, send the perfect message, or prove his worth in some extraordinary way, Laura would return. He spiraled into a vicious cycle of overthinking. Neuroscientists describe this process as rumination, a destructive habit where the mind gets trapped in loops of obsessive thinking. Studies have shown that rumination is not only linked to depression and anxiety, but also actively prevents emotional healing. By constantly revisiting painful memories, the brain is kept in a perpetual state of distress. David's mistake was believing that his thoughts could change reality. The more he tried to control the situation, the more he lost control over himself. His work suffered, his health deteriorated, his relationships with friends and family weakened. He was sinking into a quicksand of his own making. The Stoics understood that the need for control is rooted in fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of pain. But the paradox is that the more you try to control what is beyond your reach, the more powerless you become. True strength comes from understanding your own limits and embracing them. David's turning point came when he stumbled upon a quote from Epictetus: "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." For the first time, he realized that his suffering wasn't caused by losing Laura. It was caused by his refusal to accept that her decisions were beyond his control. So, David made a conscious decision to change. Instead of trying to control her actions, he focused on controlling his own. He committed to improving himself, not as a way to win her back, but as a way to reclaim his own mind. He began a daily routine of physical exercise, journaling, and mindfulness meditation. He reconnected with friends, pursued hobbies he had neglected, and devoted himself to his work with renewed passion. Psychological research supports what David discovered. The practice of cognitive restructuring, a cornerstone of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, involves challenging irrational thoughts and replacing them with healthier, reality-based ones. By reframing his obsession as a thought pattern he could control, David was able to break free from the cycle of rumination. It wasn't easy. There were days when he felt the old obsession creeping back in. But each time, he reminded himself of what the Stoics had taught him: that true power lies within, that his thoughts were his own to command. Eventually, David found peace, not because he had forgotten Laura, but because he had learned to accept her absence. He no longer clung to the illusion of control. Instead, he embraced the freedom that came from letting go. Marcus Aurelius's words had become his mantra. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It was not a simple truth, but it was the only truth that mattered. Practical strategies to reclaim control over your mind. Mindfulness meditation. Practice sitting quietly for 10 minutes a day, focusing only on your breath. When thoughts of her arise, acknowledge them, but do not engage. Let them drift away like passing clouds. Cognitive restructuring. Identify irrational thoughts about her and challenge them. Replace them with rational, empowering beliefs. Set boundaries. Limit the time you allow yourself to think about her. Give yourself permission to acknowledge your pain, but refuse to let it dominate your day. Physical activity. Channel your emotional energy into exercise. Studies have shown that physical exertion helps reduce obsessive thoughts by releasing endorphins and improving mental clarity. Focus on what you can control. Devote your energy to aspects of your life where your actions make a real difference: your health, your career, your personal growth. David's journey was not about forgetting Laura. It was about reclaiming his mind from the illusion of control. He learned that freedom is not found by holding on, but by letting go. And in that act of surrender, he discovered a strength that could never be taken away. Number 2, idealizing her. Creating an unrealistic image that never existed. You've built her into a goddess, not a human being with flaws and imperfections, but a perfect entity crafted from memory, longing, and fantasy. You've taken the few good moments you shared and magnified them until they overshadow everything else. The version of her you obsess over is not real. It never was, and it never will be. Seneca once wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." Your suffering is not caused by her absence, but by your own mind's insistence on clinging to a version of her that only exists within your imagination. Consider Michael, a 34-year-old musician from New York City. He met Rachel during a summer festival in Central Park. She was charismatic, intelligent, and beautiful. They spent just a few weeks together before circumstances pulled them apart. But those weeks felt magical, almost surreal. They shared deep conversations, laughter, and moments of vulnerability that made Michael feel truly understood. But Rachel moved away for a job offer in California, and the distance gradually killed their contact. Still, Michael couldn't let go. His mind replayed those summer nights like a broken record, fixating on the perfect version of Rachel he had constructed in his mind. To him, she was everything: an ideal partner, someone who truly understood his art, his ambitions, his flaws. What Michael failed to realize was that he wasn't holding on to Rachel. He was holding on to an illusion. He had taken the best parts of her, her intelligence, her charm, her beauty, and amplified them to an impossible standard. He conveniently erased her flaws, her insecurities, her incompatibilities with him. In his mind, she had become something far more than human. Psychologists call this phenomenon idealization, a cognitive distortion where we elevate someone to a status of near perfection, filtering out their negative traits and exaggerating their positive ones. Research shows that idealization is often rooted in insecurity and a lack of self-worth. By placing someone on a pedestal, We avoid confronting our own inadequacies. We convince ourselves that our happiness is contingent upon their presence, rather than acknowledging our own capacity for fulfillment. The Stoics understood this well. To them, attachment to illusions was the root of suffering. Marcus Aurelius warned, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are soaked in idealization, your perception of reality becomes warped. You are not in love with her. You are in love with the image you have created. Michael's obsession with Rachel reached a point where it began interfering with his music. He would cancel gigs just to lie in bed, replaying their brief time together over and over. He convinced himself that no one else could understand him the way she did, that she was the only woman who could make him whole. But Rachel was not a goddess. She was a person, flawed and imperfect, like everyone else. And the tragedy was that Michael was not mourning her loss. He was mourning the loss of an illusion he had crafted in his own mind. Imagine building a castle out of sand. It looks magnificent, intricate, flawless. But no matter how much effort you pour into it, the tide will eventually come and wash it away. Your idealization of her is that castle. It may feel solid, but it's built on unstable ground, and every moment you spend trying to preserve it is a moment lost to reality. Michael's breakthrough came when he stumbled upon another quote from Seneca. "Expecting is the greatest impediment to living. In anticipation of tomorrow, it loses today." He realized that he was living in anticipation of something that would never come. He had sacrificed his present for the illusion of a perfect future with Rachel. Determined to break free, Michael took action. Instead of avoiding reality, he confronted it. He wrote down every flaw he could remember about Rachel: her impatience, her unwillingness to compromise, her tendency to become distant during arguments. He forced himself to see her as a whole person, rather than an idealized fantasy. He also began challenging his own beliefs. Why did he place so much value on Rachel's approval? Why had he convinced himself that her affection was the key to his happiness? By asking these questions, he started to unravel the mental traps he had built for himself. Eventually, Michael redirected his energy into his music. He channeled his pain, his obsession, and his disappointment into creating something real, something that existed outside of his own mind. He performed more frequently, released new tracks, and even collaborated with other artists. As his creativity flourished, his obsession with Rachel diminished. Michael learned that true fulfillment comes not from clinging to illusions, but from engaging with the world as it is. He accepted that Rachel was not the perfect partner he had imagined. She was simply someone who had passed through his life, leaving behind memories, both good and bad. Practical strategies to break free from idealization. List their flaws. Write down every imperfection you can remember about her. Force yourself to see her as a complete, flawed human being, not an idealized fantasy. Challenge your beliefs. Question why you have placed her on a pedestal. What does her approval represent to you? Security, validation, acceptance? Create new memories. Replace obsessive thoughts with productive actions. Immerse yourself in your passions, hobbies, and friendships. Accept impermanence. Remind yourself that nothing in life is permanent, including your feelings. Just as you once lived without her, you can thrive without her now. Michael's journey taught him that idealization is not love. It is a distorted reflection of insecurity and longing. The woman he obsessed over was not Rachel. It was a mirage, crafted from fragments of memory and desperation. Once he let go of that illusion, he found freedom. Seneca's words rang true. Expecting is the greatest impediment to living. By releasing his expectations, Michael reclaimed his life, and for the first time in years, he was truly free. Number 3, excessive emotional attachment, the trap of mental dependency. You've invested so much emotional energy into her that letting go feels impossible. It's not just affection, it's dependence. You've allowed her presence, or worse, her absence, to define your emotional state. Your happiness, your peace, your sense of self have all become tied to a person who exists mostly within your mind. This is not love, it's bondage. And until you break free, you will never find peace. Seneca once wrote, "To love and to be loved is one of the most beautiful things in life, but to depend on love is to live in chains." What he meant was that genuine love exists independently of expectation or need. It thrives on freedom, not dependence. Yet, your attachment has become a desperate hunger, a craving for something that you believe only she can provide. Consider Brian, a 33-year-old writer from Chicago. He met Jessica during a creative writing workshop and was immediately captivated by her intelligence, creativity, and charm. They spent months collaborating, sharing ideas, and challenging each other's thoughts. For Brian, Jessica became more than just a romantic interest. She became a source of inspiration, motivation, and validation. But Jessica's interest waned. While Brian continued to grow more attached, Jessica began to pull away. She didn't see Brian as anything more than a creative partner, someone to share ideas with, but not her life. When she finally told him that their connection was nothing more than a fleeting collaboration, Brian was devastated. Instead of accepting reality, Brian clung harder. He couldn't write without thinking about her. He couldn't enjoy a book, a movie, or even a conversation without comparing it to what he had shared with Jessica. His entire creative process became entangled with thoughts of her. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as emotional dependency, a state where your sense of well-being becomes reliant on another person's validation, attention, or approval. Studies have shown that individuals who experience excessive emotional attachment often struggle with low self-esteem and fear of abandonment. They derive their sense of identity from their connection to another person, rather than their own achievements or self-worth. Brian's writing suffered. His creativity dried up because he had allowed Jessica to become his muse, his anchor, his purpose. Without her, he felt lost. This is the trap of mental dependency. It convinces you that another person holds the key to your happiness, when in reality, you are the one locking yourself away. The Stoics understood that attachment is often a product of insecurity. When you place your happiness in the hands of another, you are surrendering your own power. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And yet, Brian had surrendered control of his thoughts to Jessica, allowing her absence to dictate his emotional state. One of the most insidious aspects of emotional dependency is the illusion of fulfillment. You convince yourself that your attachment is justified because of the joy or inspiration that person once brought you. But that joy is now poisoned by obsession, transformed into a craving that can never be satisfied. Brian's breakthrough came not through forgetting Jessica, but through reclaiming his own creativity. He realized that his dependency on her approval was a reflection of his own insecurity. Instead of blaming Jessica for not reciprocating his feelings, he looked inward. He asked himself why her validation had become so essential to his sense of worth. He began journaling every morning, analyzing his thoughts with brutal honesty. He confronted the truth that his dependency was not a product of love, but of insecurity, that he had used Jessica as a crutch to avoid confronting his own doubts and fears. To rebuild himself, Brian committed to writing every day, whether he felt inspired or not. He stopped allowing Jessica's absence to determine his creative output. Instead, he drew inspiration from his own experiences, his own ideas, his own struggles. Psychological research supports this approach. The practice of cognitive reframing, a technique commonly used in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, involves identifying distorted thought patterns and replacing them with healthier, more constructive beliefs. By challenging his dependency and redefining his creative process, Brian gradually broke free from his obsession. The Stoics believed that true fulfillment comes from within. Epictetus taught, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." For Brian, freedom meant reclaiming his own mind, his own creativity, his own sense of self. Practical strategies to break free from emotional dependency. Daily journaling. Write down your thoughts and feelings every morning. Identify patterns of dependency and challenge them. Set boundaries. Establish clear limits for how much time and energy you allow yourself to think about her. Create mental barriers to protect your own peace. Focus on personal growth. Channel your emotional energy into pursuits that enhance your own skills, knowledge, and character. Challenge your beliefs. Ask yourself why her validation has become essential to your happiness. Identify and eliminate unhealthy thought patterns. Practice detachment. Remind yourself that genuine fulfillment must come from within, not from external sources. Brian's journey was not about forgetting Jessica. It was about reclaiming his own strength. He learned that true creativity, true happiness, and true peace cannot be dependent on another person. They must be cultivated from within. The same applies to you. As long as you allow your emotional state to be dictated by someone else's presence or absence, you will never be free. It's not about letting go of her. It's about letting go of the belief that she holds power over your happiness. Once you do that, you reclaim your own mind, and with it, your own freedom. Number 4, fear of loneliness. Creating an imaginary companion. Loneliness is a hunger. It gnaws at you from the inside, demanding to be fed. And when you can't find real companionship to satisfy that hunger, your mind creates one for you. You construct an imaginary presence, built from memories, fantasies, and unfulfilled desires. She becomes a ghost you cling to, not because of who she is, but because of the void she fills. Epictetus wrote, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." Loneliness, then, is not simply the absence of others. It is the interpretation of that absence as suffering. It is the belief that you are incomplete without someone else to validate your existence. Consider James, a 36-year-old software developer from Boston. He had always been introverted, preferring the comfort of his work and hobbies over socializing. But when his girlfriend Lisa left him after a 3-year relationship, his isolation became unbearable. Lisa had been his primary social connection. They shared weekends, meals, laughter, and late-night conversations. When she left, James found himself alone in his apartment. his daily routines now hollow and lifeless. The silence was deafening. But instead of confronting that loneliness, James tried to fill it with thoughts of her. He replayed old conversations, imagined new ones, and built elaborate fantasies of reconciliation. His mind became a sanctuary where Lisa still existed, where she was still part of his life. Psychologists call this compensatory fantasy, a coping mechanism where the mind constructs comforting illusions to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. In James's case, his loneliness became so intolerable that his mind created a version of Lisa to keep him company. She was never truly gone because he refused to let her go. Research shows that loneliness activates the brain's reward pathways, making thoughts of her feel comforting even when they are painful. A study from the University of Chicago found that social isolation increases activity in the brain's ventral striatum, the same region involved in addiction and reward-seeking behavior. This means that thoughts of her can become a form of mental addiction, a desperate attempt to avoid the harsh reality of solitude. James was not holding on to Lisa. He was holding on to the illusion of companionship, a mental construct designed to shield him from his own loneliness. But the more he clung to her memory, the more isolated he became. His social life deteriorated. Friendships faded. Work suffered. He was trapped in a cycle of self-imposed isolation. The Stoics believed that true strength comes from within. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." But James's soul was crowded, not with people, but with ghosts of his own making. The illusion of companionship is seductive because it offers temporary relief. It convinces you that you are not truly alone, but it is a false comfort. Clinging to her memory only deepens your sense of isolation, reinforcing the belief that you cannot find fulfillment within yourself. James's breakthrough came when he read a quote from Seneca. "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." It made him realize that his obsession with Lisa was not love, but fear. Fear of facing himself. Fear of acknowledging that he had become dependent on her presence to feel complete. Determined to change, James began confronting his loneliness instead of hiding from it. He forced himself to go out, to reconnect with friends, to engage in activities he had neglected. He joined a hiking club, took up photography, and even started learning to play guitar. It was not easy. There were days when the loneliness felt unbearable, when his thoughts drifted back to Lisa like a reflex. But each time, he reminded himself that his happiness could not be dependent on someone else's presence. Psychologists recommend exposure therapy as a way to confront fears head-on. In James's case, confronting his loneliness meant deliberately spending time alone without resorting to thoughts of Lisa for comfort. Instead of seeing solitude as a curse, he began to embrace it as an opportunity for growth. Eventually, James discovered something remarkable. By facing his loneliness, he grew stronger. By acknowledging his own worth, he became less dependent on the validation of others. He learned that true peace is not found in the presence of others, but in the acceptance of oneself. Practical strategies to overcome fear of loneliness. Solitude. Journaling. Write about your thoughts and emotions during moments of solitude. Confront your fears instead of escaping into fantasy. Engage in activities that fulfill you. Rediscover hobbies, interests, and passions that do not rely on anyone else's involvement. Limit fantasizing. Set a timer whenever you find yourself daydreaming about her. gradually reduce the time until it becomes a habit to redirect your thoughts. Practice self-validation. Remind yourself daily that your worth is not determined by someone else's presence. Build your own value from within. James's journey was not about forgetting Lisa. It was about reclaiming his own mind from the illusion of companionship. He learned that loneliness is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced, because only by confronting it could he truly be free. The Stoics understood that loneliness is not a curse. It is a challenge, a test of your own ability to stand alone. And when you can face that solitude with strength and dignity, nothing can truly harm you. Number 5. Fear of failure. The desperation for validation. Failure is a wound, rejection is the knife, and the deeper that knife cuts, the more desperate you become to prove yourself worthy, to prove that her rejection was a mistake, that her absence is a tragedy she will regret. But the truth is, your obsession with her is not about love. It's about validation. It's about using her approval as proof that you are good enough. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this, you have the power to revoke at any moment." Rejection itself is not the source of your suffering. It is your interpretation of that rejection, your belief that it has stripped you of value. Consider Ethan, a 32-year-old sales executive from Denver. He had always been ambitious, striving for excellence in his career, friendships, and relationships. When he met Emma, her beauty and charisma captivated him. She was the kind of woman who seemed to elevate everyone around her. To Ethan, winning her affection felt like the ultimate achievement. They dated for several months, but Emma never seemed fully committed. She was distant, often distracted, her attention divided between Ethan and her own ambitions. Eventually, she broke things off, telling him that she needed to focus on her career and that their relationship was too much of a distraction. Ethan was devastated, but his pain wasn't simply about losing Emma. It was about what her rejection represented. To him, it was a failure, proof that he was not good enough, not charming enough, not successful enough. He became obsessed with winning her back, not out of genuine affection, but out of a desperate need to validate his own worth. Psychologists call this ego-driven obsession. It occurs when your self-esteem becomes dependent on external validation. In Ethan's case, Emma's rejection was not just a loss, it was an indictment of his own value. Instead of accepting the end of the relationship, he turned his pain into a relentless pursuit of approval. Studies have shown that rejection triggers the same neural pathways in the brain as physical pain. According to research conducted at the University of Michigan, social rejection activates the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, regions associated with the emotional aspects of physical pain. This is why rejection feels so visceral, so deeply wounding. But the real damage occurs not from the rejection itself, but from the way you choose to interpret it. Ethan's obsession with Emma was fueled by his own belief that her approval was the key to his self-worth. He saw her rejection as a verdict on his value as a person. The Stoics understood that external validation is fleeting, unreliable, and ultimately meaningless. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Ethan's craving for Emma's approval made him poor, not in wealth, but in self-respect. To free himself, Ethan had to confront a harsh truth. His obsession was not about love, but about his own insecurity. Emma had become a symbol of his need for validation, and until he broke that dependency, he would remain trapped. The breakthrough came when Ethan stumbled upon the writings of Epictetus. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This realization forced him to question why Emma's rejection had such a powerful hold over him. He began journaling daily, analyzing his thoughts with brutal honesty. He discovered that his obsession was rooted in a fear of inadequacy. By clinging to Emma, he was trying to prove to himself that he was worthy of love, admiration, and respect. But as Ethan continued to write, to reflect, to challenge his own beliefs, he began to understand that his worth was not dependent on her approval. That true validation could only come from within. Psychological studies support this approach. Self-compassion therapy, developed by Dr. Kristen Neff, emphasizes the importance of treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a friend. By acknowledging his own pain and forgiving himself for his perceived failures, Ethan began to rebuild his confidence from within. The Stoics believed that true power comes from self-mastery. Ethan learned that by releasing his obsession with Emma, he was not giving up. He was reclaiming his own mind. Practical strategies to overcome fear of failure and rejection. Daily reflection. Each night, write down your thoughts and feelings about her. Analyze why her approval feels so necessary. Challenge your own assumptions. Self-validation. Remind yourself daily that your worth is not defined by her approval. Create affirmations that reinforce your own value. Detach from outcomes. Instead of focusing on her approval, focus on your own. Growth develops skills, pursue goals, and measure progress by your own standards. Cognitive reframing. Challenge negative thoughts associated with rejection. Replace them with rational, constructive beliefs. Embrace failure. View rejection not as proof of inadequacy, but as an opportunity for growth. The Stoics taught that setbacks are only failures if you choose to interpret them that way. Ethan's journey was not about forgetting Emma. It was about reclaiming his own power. By releasing his dependence on her approval, he discovered a deeper, more authentic sense of worth. Marcus Aurelius was right. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Ethan's suffering was never about Emma. It was about his own interpretation of her rejection. And once he changed that interpretation, he became free. Conclusion. Breaking free from emotional obsession is not a single act of willpower. It is a process, a relentless, disciplined journey toward reclaiming your own mind. The Stoics understood that true freedom comes not from controlling others or bending reality to your desires, but from mastering your own thoughts and actions. Marcus Aurelius's wisdom rings true. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. What you have been chasing is not her. It's the illusion of control, the comfort of familiarity, the desperate attempt to fill the emptiness within. You have created a cycle of suffering by clinging to thoughts that only serve to deepen your wounds. But now, you know the truth. The pain is real, but its power over you is not. It exists only because you choose to feed it. By applying the Stoic principles we have explored today, you can begin to break the chains of emotional dependency. You can reclaim your own mind and finally find peace where there was only turmoil. But this journey is far from over. Part 1 has only scratched the surface. To truly master your thoughts and emotions, you must understand the deeper psychological mechanisms at play. In Part 2, we will explore advanced psychological theories of love, attachment, and obsession. We will also delve into how concepts from quantum physics intersect with the mechanics of obsession, how the very fabric of your thoughts may be influencing your reality in ways you never imagined. This journey is not only about letting go of her, it's about reclaiming your own power. If you are ready to continue this journey toward true inner mastery, like, share, and subscribe to Victory Stoic. Comment below with your war cry, "I reclaim my own mind," or share your own story of overcoming obsession and finding freedom. Thank you for watching and engaging with this video. Remember, the greatest battles are fought within. Stay tuned for Part 2, where we will go even deeper into the labyrinth of the mind. Until then, keep striving for mastery, keep fighting for clarity, and never let anyone or anything take control of your mind.